In the latest development on the Dutch takeover of China's own semiconductor chip manufacturer Nexperia, which is based in the Netherlands, China's Commerce Minister Wang Wentao has called on the Dutch government to maintain the security and stability of global industry and supply chains.
Now, a geopolitical dispute between the Netherlands and China over the control of the chip maker Nexperia is threatening to disrupt global car production. Volkswagen has confirmed that some Nexperia components are used in its vehicles, but production is currently unaffected.
In late September, a quiet announcement in the Netherlands unexpectedly ignited one of the most serious trade crises Europe has faced in decades. Inside the halls of The Hague, the Dutch government made a decision that would echo far beyond its borders. It moved to take control of Nexperia, a major microchip manufacturer owned by China's Wingtech technology. Officially, the justification was national security. But what followed revealed something much deeper: the fragility of an industrial system built on global interdependence. Within days, what seemed like a domestic administrative act began to shake industries from Europe's automotive hubs to Asia's electronic centers. A legal maneuver quickly evolved into a geopolitical confrontation threatening the foundations of Europe's manufacturing power. Nexperia is not a minor player. Its semiconductors power cars, smartphones, and renewable energy systems. The company's chips are essential components in the countless supply chains that sustain the global economy. That is why the Dutch government's move shocked so many analysts. On September 30th, it invoked the long-dormant Goods Availability Act, a Cold War-era law allowing the state to seize private companies during emergencies. The law had not been used since 1952. When the order was announced, financial markets reacted instantly. To Beijing, the issue was not about legal oversight but control. The Chinese government condemned the Dutch action as an act of economic aggression. Dutch authorities, however, defended the decision, citing alleged financial irregularities at Nexperia, including reports of $200 million in missing funds. They claimed the takeover was necessary to protect Europe's semiconductor supply from foreign influence. Yet, many observers found the timing too convenient. For months, Washington had been urging its allies to curb Chinese technology operations and reduce reliance on Beijing's semiconductor networks. The Hague's sudden intervention appeared to some as a European extension of US pressure. China's response was immediate and forceful. Within days, its Ministry of Commerce suspended all microchip exports from Nexperia's Chinese facilities. What began as a regulatory dispute turned into an economic weapon. The export ban covered transistors and control units vital for car braking systems, batteries, and energy grids, the small but essential components that keep factories and vehicles operating. The impact on Europe's auto sector was swift. Nexperia's production network was deeply integrated across continents. Chips produced in Europe were often tested and packaged in China before returning for final assembly. When China halted exports, that loop snapped. Factories in Germany, France, and Italy began revising production schedules. Engineers warned that even a few weeks without chip deliveries could freeze entire assembly lines. The European Automobile Manufacturers Association cautioned that most plants had semiconductor reserves for less than a month. Within industry circles, anxiety turned into alarm. For the first time since the post-pandemic recovery, Europe faced the prospect of widespread production shutdowns, not from material shortages, but from political confrontation over a single company. China's export ban was not symbolic, it was surgical. It demonstrated Beijing's ability to influence industries not through tariffs or sanctions, but by leveraging control over manufacturing lifelines. Containers filled with critical components piled up at Shanghai's ports. European suppliers scrambled to locate alternative sources, but the ripple effects soon extended far beyond automobiles. Electronics producers, energy companies, and defense contractors began assessing their vulnerability. The crisis exposed just how dependent Europe's technological backbone had become on China's supply chains. The standoff deepened further in late October. On the 23rd, Nexperia's Shanghai division, one of its largest production hubs, announced that it no longer recognized orders from the Dutch headquarters. The statement came after European management attempted to dismiss John Chan, the company's vice president for global sales and marketing. Chinese executives refused to comply, citing violations of local labor laws and declaring that the directive carried no legal authority in China. Their announcement left no ambiguity: the Shanghai branch would no longer obey European commands. Markets were stunned. What began as a government seizure in the Netherlands had escalated into a full corporate rupture. Nexperia was now effectively divided between two jurisdictions, each backed by opposing governments. The split mirrored the growing divide between East and West in technology and trade. Around 70% of Nexperia's total chip output came from its Chinese operations. With exports frozen, billions of dollars worth of products were trapped inside China, unable to reach global customers. For European manufacturers, the situation underscored the cost of geopolitical tension in an era of tightly connected production systems. A single regulatory action had cascaded into a global trade storm, demonstrating how economic interdependence, once seen as a source of stability, had become a source of vulnerability. The Netherlands' decision, meant to safeguard national interests, instead exposed the delicate balance sustaining Europe's industrial might. What started as a security measure had spiraled into a defining moment for global trade, a vivid reminder that in the 21st century, control over technology is control over power itself. Meanwhile, European factories that depended on Nexperia semiconductors were forced to slow production or shut down entirely. Major suppliers scrambled to adapt. Francis Valeo, one of the world's leading automotive component manufacturers and a key supplier to Volkswagen, BMW, and Stellantis, announced that it had already secured replacements for most of the affected chips. The update briefly calmed investors but highlighted the magnitude of the disruption. Europe's car industry was being rebuilt in real time. Each substitution required renegotiating contracts, verifying compatibility, and reconfiguring production lines. The speed and scale of the crisis were unlike anything seen in recent decades. For many economists, the Nexperia dispute marked a turning point, from questions of boardroom management to an open geopolitical contest. The issue was no longer about corporate strategy but about which governments controlled the arteries of modern industry. The West's decision to expropriate a Chinese-owned technology company underscored its fear of technological dependence, while Beijing's swift retaliation revealed its confidence that Europe could not function without Chinese components. Both sides had tested the limits of their influence, and both discovered how deeply intertwined their economies had become. By early November, the pressure had spread across the continent. Volkswagen, Europe's largest automaker, circulated an internal memo warning that the disruptions linked to Nexperia could affect multiple brands under its umbrella. Given the rapidly changing environment, short-term impacts on production cannot be ruled out, the document stated. For a conglomerate overseeing more than 10 brands and employing hundreds of thousands of workers, even minor supply interruptions carried billion-dollar consequences. In Germany, the National Automobile Association, VDA, confirmed that its members had received an official notification from Nexperia explaining that it could no longer guarantee deliveries. Japan's Automobile Manufacturers Association issued similar alerts, noting that Toyota, Nissan, Honda, and Mazda could all be affected. In Britain, the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders called the situation a critical blow to an already struggling industry. For automakers already facing tariffs, declining sales, and fierce competition from Chinese electric vehicle makers, the Nexperia crisis struck at the very core of Europe's industrial identity. Assembly lines that once symbolized precision and resilience now stood vulnerable to political decisions made thousands of miles away. Behind every delayed shipment or stalled production line was a deeper realization: Europe's dependence on external supply chains had reached a breaking point. The Nexperia crisis tore back the curtain on decades of economic complacency. For years, Europe's manufacturing strength had relied on a delicate balance: high-tech design and research conducted at home, low-cost production and assembly abroad, and seamless logistics connecting the two. The system functioned efficiently in times of stability. But as global tensions sharpened, that model began to fracture. With China controlling both key raw materials and a significant share of global chip assembly, Europe was now confronting the limits of its own economic strategy. The data made the picture unmistakable. Nearly 90% of the rare earth metals imported by the European Union, essential for electric motors, sensors, and batteries, came from China. In September alone, Beijing's export data revealed a 31% drop in shipments of these materials, further tightening the squeeze on European manufacturers. Every ton withheld from the market meant fewer vehicles built, fewer turbines installed, and fewer electronic systems completed. What began as a dispute over one company's ownership had evolved into a comprehensive test of industrial resilience and strategic strength. Inside corporate boardrooms and government offices, the conversation shifted from immediate damage control to existential questions. Could Europe rebuild domestic supply chains quickly enough to regain control over its production base? Could it maintain economic openness while securing critical technologies? And perhaps most importantly, could it operate independently of a global power whose resources it still relied on? The Dutch government defended its decision to seize Nexperia as an act of national responsibility, a move to protect vital infrastructure in an unpredictable world. Yet across Europe, the event signaled the start of a painful reckoning. Economic sovereignty now came with a cost. Rebuilding semiconductor capacity within Europe would require billions in public and private investment, years of construction for new foundries, and a massive expansion of technical training programs. Competing with Asia's established chip giants would not be easy. Meanwhile, each escalation with Beijing risked new retaliatory measures that could further destabilize supply chains. Recognizing the scale of the threat, the European Commission began preparing emergency measures to protect essential industries from external shocks. Policymakers proposed programs to diversify supply chains toward Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Funding for domestic semiconductor initiatives was accelerated under the European Chips Act, an ambitious plan to boost continental production. But even under the most optimistic projections, these efforts would take years to deliver tangible results. Until then, European manufacturers would remain exposed to the turbulence of geopolitics.